Good morning, everyone. I'm Giles Peddy, Senior Vice President of EMEA at Lewis. Thank you for joining us this morning as we support the AMEC Measurement Month and the EMEA European Week. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by our friends at TrendKite, in particular Gerard McNamara, who is the Vice President of EMEA for TrendKite. And between us, we're going to talk a little bit about how the age of marketing and measurement has changed, how we've seen that transition very quickly. We're going to talk a little bit about where we're seeing the market move into what we're calling quantified engagement. And then you'll hear from Gerard about what TrendKite is doing in terms of working with its clients and how it fits into this quantified engagement era. And in particular, giving a great case study later on about Sega. So hopefully lots of food for thought. We would welcome any questions, so please do use the chat function within the conference call facility, and we'll be tracking the questions and we'll look to answer those at the end. So do ask questions. And of course, you can use Twitter as well to share comments as well about the webinar. But we'll crack on and get started. So quantified engagement is a new age in marketing, is what we're seeing here at Lewis. And I think it's worth us exploring a little bit about the journey we have been on. And when I started in the industry nearly 20 years ago, it was all about press clippings, the volume of coverage, the buzz factor on the coffee table in the morning. It was all really about that. And and really all about AVE as well. And that's changed a lot over the last 20 years, is the reduction in use of AVE as a metric in public relations. And that's a good thing. To us, it doesn't add any value. It's not a meaningful metric. It's purely a mathematical formula that gives us no quantifiable results at all. And the fact that we're now down to, I think, what AMEC says is about 70% usage in the US and UK is a good thing, and we need that to manifest itself around the world. But where are we now? Well, everyone will be familiar, I'm sure, with this graphic. It's the PAYSO model. It's the paid, earned, shared, owned model that we live and breathe most days. And I don't need to talk too much about this, but this is where we are today in this world of integrated communications. Indeed, tomorrow there's an event on by AMEC and the PRCA looking at the value of measurement in an integrated communications world. And this is really what anchors that world, looking at media relations and your social through an organic, or your paid programs on Twitter or Instagram, etc. All about your own media and your website, and you're tracking that, and who's on your website, where they come to and from. And I think that's all very important. But really now, it's about being data smart. In our industry, in the world of communications and marketing, we must be data smart. So on your left here, you'll see one of our dashboards that we've built at Lewis called Lewis Analytics Lite. And on the right, you'll see a sort of a snapshot graphic from a TrendKite visual dashboard. And here, on both arguments, we're using information to make informed decisions, whether it's the real estate coverage, line of business, are we getting the right coverage, or the tonality of the coverage by certain types of, by message, for example. Or is the trending in the right direction? That's very high level types of analytics. But where we're heading after that is, of course, moving on to website downloads. Are we selling more widgets? Are we getting more sign-ups or petitions for a policy change? Are we driving demand? Are we driving change? Are we driving reputation awareness? And using information and data to make better decisions. So we've gone in just over 20 years from basically the size of your press clipping book and AVE to making real-time decisions on your data. But of course, it's not just about the data, and it's not just about drill down analytics, and that's where we'll come on to in a bit. So, given we are part of the AMEC measurement month, we must continue the fight against bad measurement. So we must continue to not use vanity metrics like AVE, and we must continue to think more in a strategic sense of the word. We must think about communications as a lever for demand generation, and thinking about how we can support the sales efforts, be it a consumer client or a business-to-business client. Are we changing policy? Are we influencing people's behavior? Are we driving an action? And ultimately, are we driving an outcome? And unless we think in that sense of an outcome, then we are not doing our measurement well enough. And that's really, really important. I really want people to start thinking about outcomes rather than outputs. And to do so will allow our industry to further talk at the top table. Even some of the largest companies in the world don't have senior marketeers on the boardroom. You'd think they would, but some of them don't. And it's because they think more in a sales position, they're more financial driven. But given that, and you can understand a lot of a makeup of a company by who's on the board, by looking at assets and metrics that talk about demand generation, talk about brand awareness, policy or reputation. These are sort of the words that resonate greater at a board level than the type of coverage we're receiving or how much activity we're seeing on Instagram or Facebook. It doesn't matter to the CEO or the CFO or the COO of a company. What matters to them is, are we driving sales? Are we improving our reputation? Are we seeing an outcome from our activity, and a positive outcome from it? So everything for me needs to be centered around this very simple question. And this is a question that I get asked by CEOs and MDs of clients and prospects nearly every meeting I have with them, especially prospects who are asking us the question about why to pick Lewis, is what impact, business impact, will you deliver in my organization? They're not asking about the press clippings or the social activity or the actual scope of work. They're not asking those types of questions. They're asking about the impact we will deliver for them. And therefore, going back to my earlier point, we must measure on outcomes, not outputs, because that is what executives are interested in. So if we think about that as our foundational point, what business impact will you deliver my organization? And we have that as our foundation of our program, of our planning, of how we manage our campaigns, how we execute our campaigns, how we measure our campaigns. We can start thinking about where we're headed. And we believe at Lewis that we are entering a new era of marketing, driven by the tools and technology and the data available to us from technology tools like TrendKite, as well as technology tools like Google Analytics and Adobe and media monitoring companies and such like. There's lots of data around available, and what we have to do is start to join those dots up. And we believe we are in the era now of what we're calling quantified engagement. We can no longer execute programs that are looking to engage an audience without quantifying it. And today we have the technology tools available to do that. And I think that's why we believe this is such an exciting time and such an exciting new era for our industry. And so I wanted to tell you a little story about how we arrived at quantified engagement as an agency, because I think it actually tells you a lot about what's happening in the boardroom. So about 2 years ago, we created an advisory board called the Lab, Lewis Advisory Board Lab. And we've hosted over 100 C-suite executives in over about six or so cities around the world, in Asia, the US, and Europe. We've hosted these sessions. We've had COOs from some of the largest companies in the world attend these. We've had boardroom directors of huge conglomerates attend these sessions. And when it came to marketing, specifically, we talked about lots of different things, but when it came to marketing, there was a consistent theme, and it didn't matter where we were in the world, it still said the same thing. that they felt their brands were disconnected and they were unable to join the dots across their marketing ecosystem. They knew that their teams were good at drilling down analytics. That was pervasive. They could get their teams to drill down on analytics on social or earned media or website or email. They were good at that. But they weren't able to join the dots or look across and start to join up those dots. And we call that parenthesis. So the ability to join the dots across the board as well as drill down. And this resulted in Chris Lewis and one of the world's leading geopolitical analysts, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, writing a bestseller called The Leadership Lab, which you can see here. But then it made us think, actually internally here at Lewis, okay, if that's the case, if that's what we're hearing from the boards and boardroom executives, how can we measure that? So we created a proprietary methodology called the Lewis Marketing Engagement Tracker, where we looked at 10 of the main categories of marketing, and we created around 50 different criteria within those 10, so around 5 each at this stage, and we're building it out. We're having a MET, it's called MET, we're going to create a new one for 2019, where we started to look at the engagement and be able to score a brand's engagement across those marketing capabilities. So we were able to look at the response rates across different channels, whether social media, the paid social was personalized, whether the website was secure, or whether it was hackable, whether there were many different facets of an engagement that impacted a brand's ability to have awareness, trust, influence, and an outcome. So we could see the opportunities and weaknesses in a brand, the challenges and threats that could be posed to an individual brand. And the result of that was a series of indexes around the world. Indeed, we've just launched a couple of travel and tourism reports in Singapore and Spain just this week. But what we decided to do was analyze the 300 largest public companies in the world according to Forbes' official ranking and create the Marketing Engagement Index 2018. And this was allowed us to see who was performing really well, who was sort of where the opportunities, where the weaknesses were of some of the largest companies in the world and where they were seeing their weaknesses. And there were some general trends coming across. And there's a link here to download the report. Microsoft came out as the #1 company in our report. They were the #1 marketing engagement company based on our analytics. And across those areas of capability, they really were able to support their brand across their marketing ecosystem superbly. Bank of America was #2 and Intel was #3. There's lots of data in that report, and I won't spend time here talking about it, but what we could find with this report is even for some of those big companies, we could find ways that they could better optimize their marketing. We could actually quantify their response rate, their personalization, their UX, their social media, their trust elements to it, and provide visibility to senior executives at those organizations for the first time. They look across the parenthesis of their marketing ecosystem, not just what they used to, which was the silos of individual marketing channels. So that gets us to quantified engagement, and that allowed us to this. And this is our definition of quantified engagement, and I no doubt this will evolve over time, as it's a relatively new concept. But we believe it is the ability to use multiple marketing data points to measure and improve a brand's engagement with its target audiences. And of course, many of these brands have different target audiences. So again, you need to have nuance of who you're trying to reach. Is it a B2B audience? Is it a B2C audience? Is it in a certain vertical? Is it a certain demographic? Et cetera, et cetera. So we have to be able to understand that. But being able to quantify that is very, very important. And indeed, the way we're looking at it is to think about what quantified self did for you and me in terms of our ability to optimize, improve the quality of our life. That is the definition of quantified self, is the act of using personal data to improve one's quality of life. So if you think about now, your fitness tracker on your watch tells you how many steps you've taken, how many calories you've burned. People are now recording their food intake for calories. It's data that's allowing them to make informed decisions on whether they need to do more exercise, eat less calories, eat more calories, whatever it might be. Are they cycling faster? Are they cycling further? All these types of metrics that improve the quality of the performance and quality of our lives. And the same goes for quantified engagement. Today, brands and their customers are just a click or a bad experience away from a competitor. You know what it's like when you search a company, you find that you go to the website and it doesn't load quickly. It doesn't load within 3 seconds. 75% of brands, of the consumer, will move away and go and find somewhere else. If a website doesn't have even HTTPS nowadays, Google, and you're using Google Chrome, it alerts you to say this site is not encrypted. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be wary about sharing any of my data with that company if I didn't know that it was secure enough. So therefore, the trust of that brand has immediately disappeared. If I don't get a response within 24 hours to a message on social or chat, I think to myself, they don't really care about me. So maybe I'll go somewhere else. The inability to be found is also, if there can't be search or poor reviews on review sites. So brands must join these dots up because the customer won't wait anymore. And there is no place for silos. And that's why using information and data gives you that ability to drill down and look across. And that's what quantified engagement does. So we must harness analytics, and this is the Lewis Analytics. It's there's 12 elements of the category. I won't spend time on this today, but it captures the ability to understand audiences and your brand audiences, all the way through to social and web data, to SEO, digital state traffic. So it gives brands the ability to really understand their awareness, their advocacy, their demands, and their opportunity to make changes. And we're using this suite of technology tools to make better decisions for our clients. And then, of course, you must use the right frameworks in which to plan, manage, and measure your campaigns. As one of the agencies that helped build the AMEC integrated evaluation framework, of course, we've adopted it. And on the left is the model that and the framework that can be used on the AMEC website, and available in all those languages, which is nearly around 20 languages now, as you can see from the graphic. On the right-hand side is our application of that model that we helped build. And we're using that with over 400 of our clients now as our way we measure our program. And it's I'm going to say institutionalized across the earth, but that's because it's the bedrock of our campaign. And the beauty of the AMEC integrated evaluation framework is it helps you plan your programs better, because you can think about measurement at the start. It helps you manage your programs, and whether it's an ongoing campaign or a project, and of course allows you to measure it at the end to see the organizational impact, the outcomes that you have delivered. And I encourage, if you've not used it, to use it. It's freely available, and you can save your content online now, and it's a great resource. And it's what we're using as the bedrock of our measurement approach here at Lewis. So when you start thinking about quantified engagement, you need the right measurement framework, which we encourage everyone to use the AMEC integrated evaluation framework. You need to use a suite of analytical tools like TrendKite and like others that are available. And again, you'll hear from Gerard in a minute talking about TrendKite's role within quantified engagement. We have the marketing engagement tracker, but again, other people won't, but you need to start thinking holistically and across the board around marketing in an integrated world. And when you put that together, that's how we are delivering quantified engagement. And I think that's what's so exciting, and that's why you link measurement with analytics. You can start to get that look across and that deep, rich set of data that makes your ability to plan, manage, and measure the engagement of your programs, the impact of your programs in a much more quantifiable way. So my last point is this: if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. Henry Ford. And I think that's why we have to change. We have to embrace new thinking, new ways of doing things. Because if we always think about the outputs and ADE and and old school methodologies, we will not be moving with the times of this integrated communications. Everyone knows about integrated communications. But whether it's an earned media-driven creative from PR, or it's a paid program, or it's an email program, or it's a website, they're all integrated now. And therefore, you must think in an integrated way. And that's why we believe we've entered the era of quantified engagement. So I'm going to pause now and I think pass over to Gerard, who's going to talk a little bit about how TrendKite plays into quantified engagement, what they're bringing to their client, and is going to bring that to life with a great case study on Sega. So thank you, and over to you, Gerard.
Thank you, Giles, and I'm delighted to be here to contribute to your webinar and support AMEC Measurement Month. Taking the theme of drill down and look across engagement, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes introducing you to TrendKite and explaining why measurement and quantified engagement is important. So TrendKite looks at PR through a marketing funnel. As Giles said, if you do what you've always done, then you should expect to get the same results. So this funnel looks to change the way that PR and earned media is measured. So at the top of the funnel, we offer PR professionals the ability to execute campaigns and measure PR's impact on their brand. So essentially, it allows them to do their job. And how do we do that? Well, we do that through the lens of digital PR. So we take traditional PR and bring it right up to date for the current era. And so we offer targeting and distribution. So through targeting, we have a media database. But unlike traditional databases that are hand researched, we understand that journalists tend to stay in their jobs working for a certain publication for less than 12 months. Journalists also tend to write for multiple publications, and they also tend to be influencers. So it requires technology to build databases of the kind of stories that modern journalism writes. So we have a digital database, and we also have an influencer database of 850 million profiles. We also have the ability to send messages to that audience via email or via newswire, and via an innovative press release system called StoryKit. We then enter the world of big data, where we pour in the world's media via print news, online news, over 6 million online sources, broadcast and social media, which allows you to have best of breed analytics. So you can build unlimited dashboards, have unlimited keyword searches, and access to a 5-year archive, which goes back to when TrendKite was founded. You also have very friendly interactive reports that allow you, within the click of a button, to show anybody in the organization or externally the outputs of the work that you've done and the outcomes. So then we enter the middle of the funnel, which links traditional PR to digital marketing and helps traditional PR integrate as part of a digital marketing campaign. And here we have metrics such as SEO impact metrics, MOS scoring, that shows you the domain authority of any publications that you've appeared in. We also, in real time, link with social networks, so you can see how your news has been engaged with, how it's been retweeted, and who the people and influencers who have tweeted your news is. And then we have the web traffic piece. We have two kinds of web traffic measurement. We have deterministic data, which is a direct link to Google Analytics, which shows you what's happened after a web user has clicked on a news story, which contains a backlink, all the way through to checkout. And then we have the probabilistic data, which is data which shows you what's happened after a web user has seen a story, but not clicked on it because there was no backlink, which forms the majority of news published nowadays, probably 90% plus. And I'll show you a case study on that in a few minutes on how Sega uses that to help them with their work. But this data allows you to measure the impact of PR and outcomes. It goes beyond just legacy metrics and actually allows you to show what pipelines influenced, what the conversions are, and ultimately the attribution of revenue to the work that you're doing. It's very much in line with measuring the outcomes of the work that Giles talked about earlier. So why is this important? Well, it's important because once digital marketers found out 10 years ago which ads performed, which emails resulted in sales, and how much traffic was driven from display banners, they had a much more strategic role in the boardroom. Marketing budgets increased exponentially to the point where now 95% of all marketing goes on to paid search, 4.5% goes on to web, and 0.5% goes on to earned media. And that's a real problem, because we're in the era of pre-2010 marketing and PR, where many professionals are still saying that half the money they spend is wasted, they just don't know which half. We're probably all familiar with John Wanamaker's quote from pre-2010. So now that marketers have access to data, it creates the challenge of claiming appropriate credit. This next cartoon illustrates in a light-hearted way the concept of marketing attribution. And on here you can see various parts of the marketing mix trying to claim credit for their work. You've got the agency claiming credit for their ingenious marketing campaign. You've got the search team talking about their keywords, the social team taking credit for their dancing cats, and the influencer taking credit for tweeting the dancing cats. Then you've got the pop-up ad that moves into your mobile that you can't remove, the logo in a store mailer, and it turns out that it was actually the consumer who'd run out of a product and had to try a different brand. Now, while that may be amusing, what's actually quite shocking in this cartoon is that PR doesn't even appear as a potential contender for attribution. And that's because PR doesn't have the data. And you can see from this graphic, integrated marketing campaigns still tend to involve ads through paid media, the web and the websites we're in media, and influencers through shared media. But PR and earned media is not able to integrate because it doesn't have marketing grade data to give authority to the work that's being done in PR. And the reliance on vanity metrics is short selling PR because, as we can see from these surveys, which are now very well established, earned media is the most trusted source of media, way more than paid, owned and shared, according to Nielsen in 2017. 59% of the public trusts journalist-created media above all other forms of media, and 70% of consumers get information about purchases from earned media. Before we move on to the case study, I just want to show you what a typical journey might look like and how PR and earned media plays a role within that. So what we've got here is a typical customer journey where you've got awareness being raised. Now let's take an example. Pretend we're buying a new car. We may have seen an advert for this car on a big billboard and then had a look online and checked a review by a motoring journalist in earned media. We may have been influenced by an influencer and then gone on to that car's website and configured a new model, changing the color, the paint and the wheels. Then we go through the consideration phase. Again, the advert might continue to bolster our faith, and we'll go back into earned media to check other reviews, more interaction with shared and owned, and we've made our decision. We're validating our decision through all of those areas. And once we've got the car, then we're sharing our delight with it. And again, that is being shared and amplified. And earned media is present across all four phases of the typical customer journey. But without the right measurement, without real data, earned attribution is only stuck in the awareness phase. That takes us to our real-life example, which I'm delighted to share is from Sega Europe. Sega Europe was a company that TrendKite in London sold to a year ago. And Sega Europe have really benefited from using the platform. They launched a game called the 2-Point Hospital, which was launched on various websites. Now, traditionally, what Sega would do is they would target the biggest websites. And what they found using TrendKite and using the kind of data that we were able to provide is they were able to see that actually the biggest websites in their industry were not necessarily driving the most amount of web traffic back to their gaming site. There's two actual points within this case study of 2 Point Hospital. The third is that Sega were able to prove that a third of website traffic was influenced by the PR work of their team. So they were able to claim attribution, but they were also able to optimize on the outlets that they prioritized by having real data on where web traffic was going to and how it was impacting the readership of that article. And we've got this nice quote to finish with by Peter Oliver, who's head of PR from Sega. And he says, what TrendKite allows us to do is to be far more focused, far tighter with what we're pitching and who we're pitching to, which makes the whole process more streamlined. Our pitching is more impactful than before, and that's a direct result of having TrendKite. Thank you, John.
So thank you, Gerard. And I think what we've seen here is the power and importance of thinking about brands and their integrated approach across the funnel. So we've talked about the ability to quantify your paid, earned, owned, and shared programs. The ability to attribute, perfectly pointed out by Gerard, is always being the sticky point, and that's always the question I get asked is, how do you attribute this? And I keep saying, well, if you measure the outcomes in integrated format, the boardroom doesn't care. They just want to see the business impact. Going back to that question I said at the beginning. But with the technology now available from platforms like TrendKite on the earned media, you can start to attribute much more clearly on the earned media perspective. So I know we have some questions now. One of the questions that came out from the panel was around B2B questions. And one of the people asked about the ability to measure programs in a B2B format. I would say absolutely 100% you can measure and actually B2B. It's not just consumer brands at all. Indeed, actually Lewis, a large majority of our clients here at Lewis are actually B2B compared to consumer clients. So I would say that you need to start thinking, even from a B2B perspective, joining up the dots. So for example, when you're planning a program or a campaign, you need to start working with the website team. So let's say you're launching a new white paper or a report, which is quite common within the world of B2B, piece of content, then you need to start thinking about, right, can I get the web analytics data on the content? Where are those people coming from to that landing page? Are they downloading the report? How many have downloaded that report, and how many of them have come via the, let's say, the PR or the social that you have been supporting? And indeed, you can start to attribute that down. You can say how many of them come by email, how many of them come from the paid program, how many of them come from the organic program, from the media program, etc. And you should be able to attribute that at the outset. That's why you need to plan at the beginning how you're going to measure it. And that's why the framework that we described earlier is so important, because it allows you to do that. So we're running campaigns here when we were shortlisted for and won many B2B awards because for that very reason. So we've won one of the world's, we won the world's best technology campaign for a project we did with Infosys at Davos, where we were able to attribute both that we were able to see the volume of media, the website traffic, the downloads of the tool, that we had a calculator we could track that. We've been shortlisted for a number of awards for our work with an analytics company called SAS. Indeed, we're up for one this week, again, where we were able to have a pipeline value to that report, that campaign we ran. So we supported sales and demand as well as awareness for that, so we measured it. And so you can absolutely measure this, but you need to think about it at the beginning. And that's why you need to use a framework like the integrated evaluation framework in order to help you and guide you on that process. That's why I encourage you to use that. Hopefully that answered your question. Another question we had was elaborate on using the framework from a planning and then an evaluation perspective. How do you work with it with a client from beginning to end? For example, do you use it as a planning tool first to set targets? I mean, absolutely, it's a terrific question. And when we launched, I remember when we launched the integrated evaluation framework 3 years ago, I think it is now, here in London. That was one of the big questions. Oh, it looks like it's a planning tool rather than a measurement tool. And I went, no, it's not. It's both. It's absolutely a planning tool, because most people think of, when they think about measurement, they actually think about evaluation. And evaluation is the end point of a program. Most people's the traditional journey is, right, we've got a challenge, the client's got a challenge, they need to sell 1,000 widgets. They need to sell it to this audience, right? Well, let's come up with a creative idea, or let's execute the creative idea, and then we'll evaluate how many widgets we sold and all that sort of stuff. Measurement is actually at the beginning, the objectives. Well, we need to sell 1,000 widgets at £5 a widget, so we know what the sales are and for what reason. We know what the audience we really want to sell those 1,000 widgets to are, and then we'll execute the program using the right tactics and channels and things to evaluate whether we sold 1,000 widgets at £5 to that key audience. So it absolutely is a planning tool, and you can help you manage and optimize your program as you go to improve it. If a campaign is not performing well, you can track it. And then the evaluation perspective is at the end point. So I look at it as measurement is what are you going to measure at the outset and the objectives you want, and evaluation is, did I hit my objectives or exceed my objectives? So I think that hopefully answers that question. Gerard, did you have anything to add to that around that question around planning and evaluation?
I think the big questions we're often faced with is, can you measure the outcome of PR even when it is B2B, right? When there isn't a shopping basket at the end of the journey, and you absolutely can. I think what's worth talking about here when we're talking about B2B is that traffic to an action that is higher in the funnel is still absolutely measurable and can then contribute to conversion metrics further down the line. So for example, at TrendKite, we produce quite a lot of thought leadership, which leads to web hits and downloads. And then those downloads have a conversion ratio, which turn into demos that are completed, which then turn into a conversion ratio of deals closed and an average value of those deals.
Right.
So yeah, in B2B, it's absolutely as valid as in B2C.
Great. We've got a couple of questions here. Gerard, you look at that question and I'll answer that one first. So one of the questions came through was around the Lewis Marketing Engagement Index and whether content was available on that. Actually, yes, it was. There was a link in that slide, but it is available if you go to teamlewis.com and then go down scroll down the homepage, you will see a link to the marketing engagement and the white paper. But if you drop me an email afterwards, I can send it to you out of the kindness of my heart, because as all good measurement, we are tracking those who download it because we want to see the performance and the outcomes of our work. So that's one of the metrics we have for our own program, which hopefully you'll all agree to. But that's available, and we've had a lot of downloads of that report already, actually, and a lot of conversations in the media around it. So another question was, this is one for you, Gerard, was what do you say to a client who is fearful that their activity might not drive attributable outcomes for their organization and is very happy receiving the vanity metrics, I think that means AVE, and how do we move the sector forward to be more sophisticated?
That's a great question, and I'll answer that in the part that it comes into. I think just prior to answering the question about how would we explain to a client who is fearful that their activity might not drive attributable revenue for their organization, a couple of things really. The first, which I wouldn't necessarily say to the client, but I'd say to this audience, and it's something I picked up from the book that that Giles was talking about earlier, the Leadership Lab. There's a quote by Upton Sinclair dating back to 1878, and it goes like this: "It is difficult to get a person to understand something when their salary depends on them not understanding it." And when I heard that in the book, it made me think about the whole debate of vanity metrics and ADEs, where many PR professionals are maybe getting compensated off figures related to that. So we need to move the industry away from potentially rewarding vanity metrics and actually realizing that this 0.5% of investment which comes from marketing spend going on earned media needs to be grown. And why is that? And that's because the authority of that earned media, when it is inserted within an integrated marketing campaign, means that PR can become a scalable marketing channel. And that's not in any way to move PR away from the authenticity that it's got. It is to use that authenticity, give it data which allows it to plug in to the language of marketers, and then can amplify that earned media and validate paid, owned, and shared. Validate paid, owned, and shared because of the authenticity of that journalist's written piece. And at the moment, we can't do that because we can't speak to marketers with vanity metrics because they don't understand them. They can't work with them. They don't point to the direction of the bottom line. So that's how I'd answer that question. And actually, I'd add to it by saying that don't worry too much if the raw traffic data isn't in keeping with the magnitude of paid. Paid search and AdWords can be juiced to produce the numbers that you want. Paid media is now an investment, not a cost. But there needs to be an accelerator from the web traffic that is produced by a piece of earned media. That needs to be multiplied by the authenticity that it generates for the rest of the marketing campaign. And for that, I don't have numbers, but we can, as an industry, work towards what that accelerator should be, because it is meaningful and it's off the back of marketing going through a crisis of trust. The overuse of programmatic ad buying and the underinvestment of marketing into the brand has led to a mistrust in marketing, and that's where PR, with its authenticity, can come to the rescue and save that industry from descending into into a crisis.
I think and I think that's why I think PR the industry should be very proud of. I mean, the earned media creative, when we come from it from our creative ideation from an earned media perspective, is often more powerful. It's often more creative. It often spreads without the cynicism of a good ad. Now, we all love seeing the Christmas adverts, but often they're good stories. That's what makes them that's why we engage with these Christmas ads, the John Lewis or the others, because they're good stories and they're storytelling adverts rather than just products. But I also think there's some great creatives out there, great creative ideas. The Greggs turning their logo around so it reflected in a window of, I think, Phoenix, was a brilliantly executed creative that's driven a huge amount of shares and comments and likes from a very simple and cost-effective mechanism. That type of creative, which people remember, people think fondly of a brand that does that type of creative work. So I think that's what's and you can measure that. I mean, the volumes across the social channels is all measurable in terms of how much it's been shared and liked and commented on. All very good metrics to show how far and wide that creative spread. Are there any other questions from the listeners? Another one here. Think forward 5 years. I'm not sure I'll last that long. We all talk about integrated comms. We talk about the MarTech stack. Will there still be multiple agencies specialized in multiple areas? Will all agencies be integrated, offering ad service, design, PR? I think that's a very good question. I think there's always going to be room for specialists. I think there'll be niche specialists in these areas. I think clients will still want sometimes very niche type agencies. But I think the larger agencies, of which I think, we'd argue Lewis is probably one of those, will be offering more of that, and we've been doing it for a while anyway, really. It's been offering more integrated services. But I think our DNA as a PR industry, as a PR agency, comes from an earned media perspective. Our creatives, from a PR perspective, are all earned media driven. That's where we've grown up. That's where our industry has thrived and developed and improved itself. Ad agencies, their creative comes from a paid perspective. Their creatives are very different. They're definitely colliding. And I think the other piece in there is the consultancy piece, because marketing is spending so much on technology, on technology, and therefore that's why I think the consultancy piece is. So if we look at the Venn diagram of paid and the consultancy, and let's say PR, and then you've got sort of digital, I think that's where you're going to get sort of the bigger agencies starting to blur those lines, which is why you're seeing some of the big agencies hire planners and creatives. We've got the same on a smaller scale here at Lewis, because we're smaller than some of those big agencies, but we're still in the same direction of travel as those, the big boys. So I think that's where you'll see it in 5 years' time, is a much more blended approach, because to my point at the beginning, customers don't care whether, customers won't care. If they don't get the right experience across a different channel, across the channel they're engaging with, they'll move on. And that's why I think clients will go to agencies who can offer more of the integrated play, because they know that they're more likely to get an integrated story and campaign if they got one agency managing it for them rather than multiple agencies. So I think that's where we'll be in 5 years' time. Another one for Gerard. Will the TrendKite for 5 years be selling to the heads of comms or heads of marketing?
That's a great question. I think we will be seeing TrendKite selling to both. The reason for that is we already do sell to both to CMOs and heads of PR. The use case for CMOs tends to be much more focused on using the web traffic for optimization and attribution, as we saw in the case of Sega. And with the PR side, it's more a case of actually moving into the era of digital measurement, whilst also having the security of the legacy metrics.
Great, thank you. So we're near the hour now. I just think we'll just wrap it up, let people go on with the rest of their day, and I'm sure they're going to lots of events this week around Measurement Month, the Measurement Week here for Europe. So I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to Gerard McNamara of TrendKite and myself this morning. I hope you all have a good day, and I hope you start to think in that integrated way. You start to plan, manage, and measure your programs using the right framework, embracing data to not just look down, but look across, and start to really think about the outcomes that you're looking to achieve, not just the outputs, and using the technology available in tools like TrendKite and others to help you navigate that journey. So welcome to the new era of quantified engagement, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.